Hi guys, this is Momin. Welcome back to OCD Recovery. I wanted to take up from my last video that I did on this channel, which was types of contamination OCD. So I spoke about how contamination OCD can manifest and in various forms because it's not just about cleaning and washing, obviously, but it does overlap with a lot of other things, a lot of other themes and fears and whatnot. So yeah, I just did that one. So today I want to talk about uh, doing exposures for contamination OCD, how I went about them, and your journey might be different to mine, but I just thought I would talk about mine, and you can maybe find some similarities and um, maybe draw some inspiration. I don't consider myself an inspiration, but I mean, yeah, just giving you hope if possible. But before I go on, please do subscribe to our channel, like this video, really helps with the algorithm if you do. And leave your comments, ask me any questions if you want, give me any feedback, anything else related to contamination OCD you want to know. I can try to talk about it and do my best to give you any kind of information that I can. So again, just as a disclaimer, like this is how exposures work for me. Your journey might be a bit different to how you want to do exposures, or if you are going to a therapist or a coach, they might help you set exposures a bit differently. But I think the approach with doing exposures is quite similar to how whatever your overall journey is. So. If you I don't know if you have watched any video of mine before this. I've had OCD since I was 14 years old. So basically I was doing cleaning compulsions since I was 14 years old. And initially it started from, for example, like washing my hands or just doing any kind of cleaning ritual twice, and over time it increased to like it went up till like 100 times in one go, which was even up till a year and a half ago. I think I was doing that. So obviously there was an incremental increase over time. It didn't go away. It didn't become better. In fact, it grew out of control over time. Sorry for my hair. Like I had a shower and it looks a bit scruffy, but and rough. But I've tried to do something with it so I don't look like I just got out of bed, which I did not, but like, just letting you guys know. Um, anyway, so I try to be more prepared for this video. Um, yeah, so I think initially I had just like very, very patchy success with exposures, in the sense that I would do an exposure and then I wouldn't do another exposure for another like month or maybe 2 months. So and I was not consistent with them at all. I did not keep up with them. I did not build any kind of momentum. I would just do a little one, and because that in itself would be such a big deal, I would use that as a badge of honor for like the next 2 3 months, and then by that time, this small tiny exposure that I did feel like I conquered, it would kind of I would feel the need to do it, conquer it again, because the fear and the aversion to touching that specific object or thing would have come back in like 2 months. Because again, I did not keep up with any other exposures. I was not keeping up with facing my fears. So um, it it would I would go back to square one. I mean, even though we really don't go back to square one. But in my head, that's how it felt like. Okay, now I have to do this again, which means I'm back to square one. Why didn't I keep up with them? Why didn't I keep up with my exposure? So I was very patchy, and just like I was still just very reluctant to do any exposures. I was completely terrified, and also absolutely demotivated to do any recovery work. And demotivation is probably my one of my biggest hurdles and one of my biggest obstacles throughout the recovery journey. That's been just extremely difficult to deal with. So And when I started to work on my recovery, I think I've talked about this before as well. For one whole year, I had just tried to look at, okay, I mean, right now I'm not doing exposures and I'm still terrified of doing exposures. At least I can look at what is it I'm really afraid of? What's really going on over here? So I worked on, and I really changed my perspective. I really broke it down, and I knew I had come to understand what was it that I was afraid of. What was keeping me in the compulsion cycle? Why did I feel the need to do compulsions? What was I afraid would happen if I don't do compulsion? So what that had done is it had reduced my anxiety considerably. Like, I would say if I was experiencing anxiety 10 out of 10, it had come down to like a 4 out of 10, which was great, which was amazing. And I was able to feel so much better in my life. However, I was still waiting for that moment that, oh, because I have worked on my fears are down, I should feel much better and motivated and brave enough and okay enough to touch, you know, this object and that object and whatnot. Um, but but that point never came. I never felt comfortable, or there was never a moment where I thought, yes, I feel the best in to do this exposure now, and now I'll do it. That point never came. The exposures that I eventually did, I literally had to force myself to do them, which I'll just come to. So, um, eventually there came a point where, again, I had just been coasting. I had not been doing any exposures. I had just been trying to mentally work it out, hoping that, oh, that'll be enough. But obviously, deep down I knew that I had to do exposures at some point. Like, this won't go away like this, because my brain was trained in a very specific way. So, I mean, I had trained my brain so far in a specific way to be afraid of touching certain surfaces or not doing certain compulsions. I was so um, set in my ways that to break that, I had to do it by action. So this is what I also often talk about in the groups as well, which is where, like, obviously there's a part of the recovery journey where you have to work on things, where you might have to work on things like mentally and try to break things down. And that's the theoretical part in like understanding how OCD works and how you think different techniques and approaches to working on recovery work. That's a theoretical part of it. But then there's a part of it where you have to like do it in action as well, like do something physically about it as well, which includes doing exposures and like other things like adding more structure to your life. So you have to put all that theory into action as well, and demonstrate to your brain that what the knowledge I have gained is applicable through action this way. So there came a point eventually where I recognized and acknowledged and knew that my anxiety levels had dropped down significantly. It was just that immense fear that was still in place. How do I break that? How do I face that? How do I stop being afraid? And I was so sick and tired of my own self, to be honest, like of not doing exposures, of coasting, of not going forward with the recovery journey, of just making excuses and justifications of why I think I shouldn't do them. I was so just sick and tired of myself that eventually I thought, you know what, I don't care if this just blows my entire life up. I don't care if my life becomes like a complete disaster after this, or if I'm miserable. I just don't like. I no longer want to be confined to my bed the entire time. I want to be able to just like live a normal life like my family members do in my house. So I want to be able to just live life, in fact. So within a month, what I did was, and this is something I had done even earlier on, but I never really followed it. I had made like a hierarchy of exposures of what I thought was least least triggering, or the thing that I thought, the exposure that I thought would give me the least anxiety, and just build that hierarchy to, okay, what is it that gives me the most anxiety, that terrifies me like to the very core. um, and to be honest, like there wasn't any very clear distinct hierarchy I could make, because there were some things that I thought were not as scary for me, but then when I was about to do them, I felt like they were just as scary as like one of the top exposures. So, I mean, there wasn't any. If you ever do that, or if you do that with, like, again, whoever you're working with on your exposures, there might be a point where the lines will be blurry. You might not find like a very distinct category of, this is a low level exposure, this is a high level exposure. There might be some like uncertainty over there as well as to where it falls. But anyway, it's still somewhat helpful, because it can give you maybe some kind of direction and plan and structure as to how you go about your exposure. So I made that hierarchy. I took that hierarchy out that I had made like many months ago, and I thought, okay, let's just start to do these exposures, because this feels like the last obstacle left, because I understand what rational thinking is. I embody that in many ways in other areas of my life, but this needs to be done. So within a span of a month, I would say, because I believe it was maybe 4 weeks, I did all my exposures. I did all the exposures that scared me and terrified me. And obviously, I mean, this goes without saying that when you do an exposure, it's not, I mean, which is obviously an amazing task to do. Overnight, you don't feel recovered, or you don't feel like, oh, I have conquered this and now I don't need to do this again. Once I would do an exposure, I would have to repeat them on a daily basis, while then adding maybe a new exposure as well. So you have to, because if you, like, when I did one exposure, obviously the next day, if I had to do it again, the discomfort that would arise in doing it would be significantly less, but it would still be there, obviously, because my brain was used to thinking and faring and behaving a certain way. So it takes time for the brain to get used to these new things that you are doing again. So I had to repeat them, and the discomfort was lingering for like the next few months. But it just honestly, took this immense burden off my shoulders when I did all of these, and I could. I mean, that's when I really started to feel like I'm taking back control of my life. I mean, wrong words in the sense that I'm taking back my life, not control of my life, because I mean, control is one of the things that drives OCD. But what I mean is that now I'm the curator of my life. I think that's a better word. I'm the curator of how I go about my life. I'm not like taking instructions, or I'm not deciding or making decisions based on what my terrified brain is telling me to do or not to do. So, and yeah, I mean, even when the discomfort was lingering, there would be obviously a doubt that would come in, and I would think that, am I doing the right thing by opening this door handle with my hand and not with the tissue? Like, I mean, there would be that, but I would just let it be there. I would just, like I said, I mean, that was some of that lingering discomfort that was still there. Physically and mentally, like mentally, those intrusive thoughts would still come in about not being sure about, did I make the right decision by doing all of this? And then physically, obviously, it would feel uncomfortable doing those things. But since at this point, because I had worked on my fears for a long period of time, and I had done the first step of doing all those exposures at least once, I felt like OCD was not as chronically latched anymore. And therefore, I did not feel the need to go into the details of my intrusive thoughts or my fears anymore, because I mean, I knew what they were. At this point, I could just let them be and just carry forward with doing the exposure. And even though like the thoughts would still be there in the background, or the discomfort in my body would still be there, I would still just go ahead and carry on with my day, doing whatever task I needed to do, um, doing groceries or whatever I needed to do. I still carried on with my day, and I did not, because if you're doing the exposure and then you are just sitting by yourself and then monitoring yourself and thinking, okay, how anxious do I feel? Is my anxiety high? Is my anxiety low? Where in my body am I feeling the anxiety the most? Okay, how frequent are my intrusive thoughts? Do I feel them? Do I not feel them? Are they there? Are they real? Are they not? Do I need to figure this out right now? Don't do that, because you are, by trying to figure it out and by trying to work it out in your head right after doing an exposure. Something's happening to my words again. You are keeping that fear in place. You are still keeping that connection of fear intact between the exposure and like being able to not live your life after that. So by carrying on with your day after the exposure and not sitting and trying to figure it out, letting the thoughts be there in the background, letting the discomfort and the fear be there in the background, that's where your brain starts to make that connection that, okay, despite doing this scary thing, I was still able to carry on with my day and do these tasks. Because before this, I thought if I do the scary thing, then I cannot do anything in life at all. But okay, I guess I can maybe do these things. So your brain starts to form new pathways and new forms of living, and because it's starting to see a new way of living, even though this is the way that you used to live before you had OCD. But because for so many years you've been doing compulsions, you've been like indulging in avoidances, and you've been in this fear cycle, obviously your brain kind of in some ways forgets that you lived that way. And so when you start to do it again, it kind of starts to feel like, or at least that's how I felt, I started to feel like that I'm learning a new way of living. It felt familiar because obviously that's how I used to live, but it also felt extremely unfamiliar. So it was kind of both at the same time. It's a strange but also very interesting feeling. It's like you're starting to learn how to walk for the first time. So yeah, because it was not chronically lashed, I was very easily able to carry forward. Um, and yeah, and that's why I did not just sit and try to figure out, okay, what's happening with me and whatnot. And in fact, I think because I've been doing a master's program, um, on some of the days that I did my exposures, I also had to complete an assignment and do a deadline. So I did not schedule my exposures in like, okay, today I have an important deadline or important work to do, so I will not do my exposure because otherwise I won't be able to do that. At this point, like I said, I was so sick and tired. I thought, you know what? I mean, even if I am a little uncomfortable after my exposure, I'll just do my assignment however I'm able to do it. I'm just so tired of putting recovery on hold. I just need to go forward with it. I'll do both simultaneously. I'll do both like in the same day. Um, and honestly, that also really helped because before this, when I was not doing exposures, part of it was also because I was making excuses for myself that, oh, today is a good day or an important day, or I have to do this, I have to do that, so maybe I won't do an exposure. So once I cut out all those, once I stopped giving myself the option of not doing those exposures and just like whatever I had scheduled for my day, doing my exposures regardless, it honestly, I just made my life easier for myself. So I'm not saying that you must do it this way as well, but I'm saying it is an option to do it that way. Don't put off exposures just because you have something important to do. you'll always have something important to do. Whether you're doing a job, there will be something, an important task at work that you have to do. If you're in school, you always will have an assignment or something to do. Or like you might have an event in life. Like you might have like an anniversary or a birthday or something of the sort always comes up in the way. So don't wait for like the perfect, great, best moment to schedule an exposure. Just go ahead and do it anyway. Um, and honestly, that really helped when I was doing some of my important assignments. Even while I did feel a bit uncomfortable, it just that helped my brain really see that I can live my life even if I do scary things, even if I feel uncomfortable, I can go ahead. And that's like one of the main important parts of doing exposures, that you are showing your brain and your body that you can handle this discomfort and you can still live a life. Life does not have to be free of discomfort and unhappiness or anxiety or all those things. Those things can exist while you can also go ahead with your day and with your life. And so yeah, I think this is like a very common question where people say, okay, I've done the exposure now what do I do? My advice would be to, like I said, just go ahead and do things that you want to do. Healthy distractions are really helpful over here. So whether it's going and doing groceries, whether it's completing an assignment, whether it's making your bed, making yourself a cup of coffee, or I mean whatever it is, reading a book, whatever it is that you need to do, just carry on, just carry forward. And live life a little bit. Go and see your friends if you schedule that. Don't wait for the anxiety to go to do all those things. Don't sit and try to figure out what's happening, what's not happening, where are my fears, do I need to figure them out. Let's break them down and dispute them right now, because I feel them the most after the exposure. Disputing when you're like triggered or when you're that highly anxious really does not help. Schedule time for disputing when you're not like that heavily triggered or anxious. For me personally speaking, I think doing exposures was probably like 80% of the thing that I needed to do for OCD, and 20% of it was the more theoretical part and the more rational thinking part. But that's also because I think even before like actively working on my recovery, I was pretty much a rational thinker, or I mean, I had already been leaning towards like rational thinking in my life. Um, so, so I mean, when I started to work on recovery, that's not something I had to spend too much time on. Exposures was the part where I had to like put the most effort into. And by the way, I did all these exposures while I was extremely still demotivated. I mean, I wasn't like, okay, yes, I feel in the perfect headspace and fully confident and brave and all those things, because I used to discuss this in my WhatsApp group as well, where I said I don't feel brave enough to do them. And that's what I learned, that I don't need to feel brave, I don't need to feel confident to do them. I can do them anyway. And that's in fact a bigger win, that you're able to do them even without like all the ingredients that you think that you need, which is motivation, happiness, confidence, bravery, all those things. You don't always need them. Um, so yeah, I mean, for contamination OCD, I would say a big part of it is exposures play a big part of recovery from contamination OCD, because yeah, I mean, there's no because to it, because you just need to do them. Um, and through doing exposures is where you begin to also then have like an even deeper understanding of OCD and anxiety and how it functions. Because before exposures, obviously, yes, you know it, but when you experience it, you develop this. You develop a very deeper understanding and connection with. Oh, okay, now it actually clicks. Now it really makes sense. Um, and that's how you are able to then truly also believe not just theoretically know, but believe that my fears are exaggerated and just completely blown out of proportion and irrational. I hold a lot of irrational beliefs. That's where you start to believe it. Before doing exposures, you are still completely bluffed by your irrational beliefs. You are completely convinced by your fears. Like I said, it's the doing that brings that shift. It's the doing that really makes the big difference. Not just mentally figuring it out, but also practicing all of that stuff. So, yeah, I just thought I would talk about my at least my journey with exposures and how I worked on them. You can obviously set exposures for yourself, and you can also do them and set them with your therapist or coach who you're doing it with, who you're consulting for OCD, and you can do them. You'll be fine. It'll be okay. It's going to be difficult. It's going to feel absolutely impossible to do them initially. You won't be able to even imagine doing exposures. That's how it felt for me. But somehow I was able to do them. There was a point in my recovery where I thought, you know what, maybe this is as good as it gets for me. I am not one of those people who will be able to make a full recovery, and I just don't see myself in that position. So that's fine. I accept that. This is as good as it gets for me, but it won't happen for me. That's fine. But obviously, I was just like, that was just the fear talking, and I was still terrified of doing exposures. So once I did them, literally everything changed for me. I think that's about it. I do have more videos planned for contamination OCD, so if you liked this video, then stay tuned for more videos. And yeah, I'll see you soon. All right, take care of yourselves. Bye, and I'll look forward to your like comments and feedback on this. Bye.